Welcome to Keep Calm and Man Up, beautiful Arizona. When we look at courage, it takes very many forms. We naturally think of the armed services and how they defend our safety. But it also comes in, how do you treat your friends? What about ethical situations that come up at work or at home or in the community? Do you stand up for courage? Do you stand up for your family and friends? So let's find out from a biblical perspective what courage means. See you after the break.
In times like these, courage, as a godly trait, is a bright light in a person's character. But how is courage defined in the world today, and how does it differ from God's expectation? The world sees courage as the ability to face fear and danger with steadfastness, often associated with physical strength and bravery. It is seen more as an action with a distinct ending. God's perspective defines courage as the ability to do what is right and necessary, despite difficulty or danger, rooted in the fear of the Lord. It is generally seen as a divine command to overcome fear, as seen in biblical characters as Joshua and David, who displayed courage in the face of overwhelming odds. A Christian courage is one that is characterized by a strong desire to live and a readiness to face challenges, often rooted in a deeper desire for greater good and the assurance of God's presence and power. In summary, the world defines courage in terms of human strength and bravery. God's definition emphasizes a deeper divine strength that transcends physical fear. Looking closer at the world view, we see bravery and courage emphasized in the raising of boys by older generations, and this has only changed in millennial and Gen Z parenting styles. Interestingly, these modern parenting styles may be linked to the distinctly different teaching now seen in schools and college, rather than that of generational parenting, which is more conservative in nature. Why is having courage important? Courage is a key component in helping men to make tough decisions and face important challenges as they move forward in life. It's not just about bravery, but also moral courage, which is the strength to stand up for what is right, even in the face of social pressure or personal risk. Courage helps men align their actions with their values, resolve cognitive dissonance, and grow both personally and professionally. It is a skill that can be learned and developed, and is essential for leadership, innovation, and problem solving. Is there a link between trust and courage? The link between trust and courage is a fundamental part of interpersonal relationships. We have said that courage is defined as a mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger. Trust is the willingness to be vulnerable based on the belief that you will not be rejected or hurt. In the Bible, trust and courage are intertwined, with courage arise from a deep trust in God's presence and promises. The New Testament exemplifies the courage of the apostles and early Christians who faced persecution for their faith. Today, the bond of trust between colleagues, especially Christian colleagues, can be easily crushed by deceitfulness, and sometimes, courage to maintain that trust can be difficult, without the help of the Holy Spirit within you. Examples of showing courage. An easy example that many would think of immediately would be our armed forces, both modern day, and the heroes of old. Looking at old movies where men stormed the beaches in various landing craft, meeting a hailstorm of gunfire and mortars barely shows what was going on in the minds of the soldiers who ran up the beaches. On the 50th anniversary of D-Day, in 1994, I was honored to speak to hundreds of survivors who had stories to tell. On the morning on June 6, these people, who looked like any other grandpa, visited the graves of those who had fallen 50 years previously. I met one in particular who hadn't forgiven himself for surviving in a landing craft where everyone else perished as the ramp dropped. It brought a whole new perspective to what they went through. I have met survivors of the Arnhem campaign, where the British 1st Airborne were left stranded behind enemy lines for 9 days, waiting for a relief column that never ended up arriving. They had to swim back across the Rhine hungry and exhausted, leaving weapons and ammo behind. To the modern day, when Navy SEAL, Marcus Luttrell was the lone survivor of the ill-fated Operation Red Wings. As civilians, we can never comprehend what happens under fire. There is a courage in all of us, but the army has a way of bringing out the very best in those that put on the uniform and defend us daily. Courage is not just about the military. The firefighters who ran into the World Trade Center on the 9th of November, or the Granite Mountain hotshots who died in the Yonell Hill fire. The men of the various police departments that don't know what each day will bring. Nowadays, even traffic stops can end in a deadly shooting match. Courage isn't always violent. What kind of courage does it take to be a whistleblower of a government department of big industry? Whistleblowers expose corruption and unethical behaviors, and practices display a different type of courage. By risking their jobs, reputations, and sometimes their lives, they prioritize integrity and the greater good over their personal safety. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. This was a pivotal act of courage during the civil rights movement, and her defiance against racial segregation showcased her bravery in the face of potential arrest and societal backlash. Finally, as we saw on a recent episode, Jackie Robinson faced racism and jealousy with courage to forge a new direction for black athletes in sports. Courage is found in many forms and multiple scenarios. We never know when it will happen to us, but could you say what you do when faced with danger or an ethical position? 3 biblical characters, among many, that show distinct courage are Moses, David, and Esther. Moses had a distinctly quiet courage. Many could argue he was a reluctant leader. He got his main biblical kudos for standing up to Pharaoh, and his part in parting the Red Sea. While he was God's chosen person to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, he had a solid supporting cast. Miriam was the older sister of Moses, and she encouraged Pharaoh's daughter to take him in as her own and provided their mother to nurse him in Exodus 2 verse 7. Miriam also appears later after the Red Sea had killed the Egyptians. While Moses sings praise to the Lord, Miriam gathered the women and led them in song in Exodus 15 verse 20. Miriam closely followed her brother, Moses, on his journey, providing encouragement when he lacked courage himself. Aaron, Moses' brother, carried a big load of heavy work throughout the Exodus, and it was having his brother by his side that almost certainly provided Moses with his earthly courage throughout the many struggles he endured. Moses did, however, carry out God's will and suffered the wrath of Pharaoh, as well as the Israelites. Throughout Exodus 5 we see the Israelites directly blame Moses for their work conditions imposed by Pharaoh. Even after the 10 plagues and parting the Red Sea, the Israelites blamed Moses, yet still he moved forward, following God's plan. Put yourself in his shoes and ask, would you take all the moaning and aggravation from the Israelites when all Moses originally wanted was to live his life out as a shepherd with his wife Zipporah? Esther lived at a time when Israel lived in exile within the Persian Empire. She was selected as the queen to King Xerxes after the deposition of Queen Vashti. Esther 2 verse 17 tells us that the king loved Esther more than all the other women, and won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. Her courage materializes when Haman, an Amalekite, an high-ranking official in King Xerxes' court, harbored a hatred for all Jews. One of the Jews was Mordecai, who refused to bow to Haman. Haman gave a proclamation that all Jews needed to be killed and received the king's approval for the genocidal decree. Esther 3 verse 13 states letters were sent by couriers to each of the royal provinces with the order to destroy, kill and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, male and female, and plunder their possessions on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month of Adar. Mordecai asked Esther, a Jew, to intercede on their behalf. In those days, a person could not approach the king without being summoned, at the risk of death. Only if the king extended his gold scepter would that fate be lifted and the person could speak. Mordecai reminded Esther of her divine purpose and encouraged her to take action. In Esther 4 verse 14 Mordecai states, if you remain silent at this time, relief for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows, if perhaps you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Esther called for a 3-day fasting in Esther 4 verse 16, "Go and assemble all the Jews who can be found in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days. And my maidens will fast as you do. After that, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. If I perish, then I perish." Esther put her faith in God and asked for courage to face the king. Esther's bold approach to the king led to a series of divinely orchestrated events, eventually leading to the saving of the Jews. After a series of elaborate banquets for the king, she told him of her Jewish background and sought favor from the king, Esther 7 verses 3-6. David, the son of Jesse, is one of the most prominent figures in the Old Testament. A descendant of Abraham and the lineage that Jesus was born through, as God promised, David began life as an insignificant youngest brother and was not considered as anything important. David's journey started when he was anointed by the prophet Samuel. This shows us that God saw through his human appearance to where his heart lay. In 1 Samuel 16 verse 7, God says to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at his heart. David showed courage above every Israelite when he took on the mighty Goliath, armed with only 5 stones and a sling. In 1 Samuel 17 verse 45 he yells to Goliath, "You come against me with a sword, spear, and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled." David's victory in slaying Goliath was not just skill, but a testament to his faith in God's deliverance of the Israelites. While most of us would rest after these antics, David suffered at the hands of King Saul, as he went on the run as Saul tried to kill David. Ultimately, David became king of Israel and was successful in many battles. He always sought God's guidance in battle, notably in 2 Samuel 5 verse 19 when he asks, "Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand?" The positive response from God was followed by a great victory and underscored David's reliance and faith in God. David's faith and courage serves as an example of how God can encourage people to face overwhelming odds and challenges for God's purpose to be fulfilled. These are 3 well-known figures from the Bible who showed remarkable faith and courage. How does this affect who we are and how we can show courage in today's world? I would again start with the Bible, especially Deuteronomy 31 verse 6 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you or forsake you." Do you run and hide from danger or moral decisions or face them? Have you put your life on the line for your brother or sister? Have you stood up for your friends, family, or work colleagues in the face of wrongdoing, to defend those who might be weak? In the comments section of the video, let us know about it. Never be afraid to stand up for what is right. We may be surrounded by people and voices saying that keeping quiet is the safe option. History shows us that it doesn't work. While Neville Chamberlain sought to appease Adolf Hitler, the German war machine overtook much of Europe, leading to World War II and millions of lost lives. Can history repeat itself? The persecution of Jews and Christians by the Islamic regime is a fact. World leaders allow Muslims to get into power and change the face of Europe. Will it happen in the United States, or has it quietly begun and people have stood by, rather than standing up for what is right? Tough questions, and there will be those who don't like the subject matter. However, what defines where you draw the line and where do you stand up with courage?
This year, we come back to 250 years of the United States of America. Through that time, thousands upon thousands of Americans have given their lives courageously in various conflicts. In World War II alone, you look at Pearl Harbor all the way through to the Pacific campaigns of Okinawa, Iwo Jima, Midway being a naval battle, the Marshall Islands. In Europe, you look at Anzio, you look at the D-Day landings, the Arnhem campaign, all the way through to winning at the Rhine. Later you go on to the Korean War. And the thousands of people that forced into the Korean War that still has the DMZ today. And in the 60s, 70s, you turn round to the Vietnam War. Here in Gilbert, we remember everyone who died in these conflicts. Every city has a list of names. The Ong family lost 4 people in Vietnam alone. This is the price of courage at its most. We've discussed all this time what courage is in all its various ills. But at the end of it, the World War II monument, Vietnam, Korea, this is where people remember it. This is where we should always remember the people who laid down their lives. And also not forget police officers, ICE agents, the fire department. These are all people that serve us to keep us safe. This is courage in life. Thank you for watching. Keep calm and man up, because these men certainly did. See you next week.